Yeah, there's a really cool app that does that, but I just use script because like then you can pull the pointer and do stuff. So like key window, recursive description, and oh, that kind of didn't do that. If you do expand, what that'll do is it'll allow new lines to actually be rendered as new lines, and then you can see the entire frame, and wrapping is turned on, so that doesn't really fit on the screen, but you can see how it's kind of indented. So you can see like this icon view has this image view inside of it, and it's got this icon image container view, and you can just like grab something here, go copy, and then go ID, oops, capital wrong, ID equals new instance, paste in your pointer, and you've got a reference to that. So you don't even need to figure out like where in the view hierarchy it is. You can just grab it via its pointer and just mess with it. Just change the frame. We were experimenting with alpha and stuff earlier. So yeah, you can just like call methods on it. If we flip back over to the class dump.
So these will be the things that you use the most
Most of the time.
When messing with some application, running application.
Yeah, I use that a lot. A lot of the stuff, if you're trying to do something and you can use public APIs, that's great because they're not going to change. They're required to stay as they are in order for App Store. So if you can use public APIs, definitely use them because like that's code that you know you won't have to revisit come next iOS update time. So I use an app called Dash, which is a really great documentation viewer. You can just type in like UI view, and it gives you the documentation. It's got a really nice little documentation viewer. I'd love for some way to be able to take class dump and feed it into this, and then be able to just like click on a property and type in and annotate my own annotations. Like if someone, and this kind of goes to Britta with the documentation sort of cheering on, I would love to be able to do that. And like if there was a super convenient tool that just like I could just type in, you'd see a lot of documentation. Just saying that. Yeah, I don't know if that answered your question, but yeah, other tools, NM, iPhone Dev Wiki is great. Just seeing and sometimes if someone's worked in the same space before, just asking them on IRC, hey, you worked with such and such a thing, is there any pitfalls? Where should I start? And sometimes they'll tell you, or sometimes they'll say, nope, that's in my commercial tweak, you're on your own, which is totally fair. But, you know, definitely ask people, and they might even go and start spelunking with you. Anyone else? Oh, hi.
So, could you talk about the debugging a little bit? Like, I know that I've run into situations where a tweak will either start leaking memory or just crash Springboard entirely.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk a little bit about how, like, if you ran into that in something that you wrote, how you would?
Okay. Yeah. Crashes are something that's going to happen frequently when you're building something. It's an expected part of development, and Apple has some pretty good tools that don't work with Springboard. Most of the things you're going to write are working. You know, you're going to be playing around in Springboard. So the first thing to note is that everything gets logged. So when a crash happens, it goes into your syslog. And I'm going to make this a little, I don't know if that's visible. Right. So I wrote a tool called Device Console, which gives you the syslog that isn't trapped inside of Xcode, and it syntax highlights it for you. So that's a really good start when you actually do encounter a crash. And I'm going to fake one right now. So that is going to fake a bus error. You'll notice that, oh, it's crashed, and it's now restarting Springboard in safe mode. And let me see here. It should Springboard. And so those will show up inside of a Crash Reporter app if you haven't installed Theos. That's a really great start, but it doesn't convert the pointers of things like the path where it crashed. It doesn't convert those to the names. So there's a tool in Cydia called Symbolicate. So what that'll do is it'll convert those sort of memory addresses to the symbols they represent. So you can go and run Symbolicate Springboard, and that's just that's a script that I have on my Mac that kind of tunnels into my device and then runs it. And if you look up top here, you can see, oh, here was the stack when it crashed. So it crashed inside a mock message trap with a mock message. And, you know, with a real crash, that is just one I kind of simulated. With a real crash, you would actually get like the name of your tweak in there. And if you compile with symbols, it'll tell you the name of the function that crashed.
Show us it on a random crash log on the device, like every user.
Sure. Let's go. That's the path. There we go. Okay, so we're crashed YouTube. And you can see here, ProTube is crashing the latest version of YouTube. So that kind of came out yesterday. And they don't have symbols, but we can see it's inside of UI view controller, set view appearing state is animating. And if they release ProTube with symbols, you'd be able to see, oh, that's exactly the name of the function that's crashing. Usually the context really helps as well. So that's sort of your first step. If you just look in there and you can see where it's crashing, that really helps. Another option is to install GDB. So if you pull the version of GDB that's in the SDK and re-sign it, you can run it right on your device. You can attach to Springboard, you can attach to mobile SMS, you can attach to preferences, you can attach to anything, and attach to it, run your tweak, wait for it to crash. GDB will interrupt and say, here's where you are. You can do a backtrace, you can look at the registers, you can look at the stack, you can look at the entire heap, you can look at everything, and that's really helpful. If it's a positioning type issue, where like, oh, I rotate it and then the frame is weird or some rendering isn't quite correct, for the most part, I just use script and just ask it, like, what's the frame of this? Or I look in the view hierarchy, and it's like, why is this view over there? Oh, it's because its frame is set to this, and it's missing its resizing mask or something like that. And that's really easy to do. You can actually just go inside script and set the auto resizing mask. For anything that uses like enums, like UI view auto resizing, you can look inside your documentation viewer and you can actually see flexible width, which kind of tries to, as the parent resizes, so does your view, is actually one shift left one. So you can actually just take that, copy paste it into script and say like view dot auto resizing mask equals one shift left one, and then it'll apply it to view. So you can try your changes without even recompiling or doing anything like that. But it turns out recompiling with Theos is super easy. You just type make package install, resprings your device for you, and you can just, your run debug cycle is really quick. You can just like have it go, run, test. Nope, that didn't work. Okay, try it again. And then you end up with like 1,000 deep packages in your directory for each time you compile. So that's fun. I don't think I have anything else. That's for the most part, that's what I do to debug issues. The most frightening issues to debug are ones where you get a crash and it's not actually your fault. Or it might be your fault, but it might be your fault only through some weird other transformation that some other package has caused that's installed on the device. And as a result, you have to go and figure out what permutation of packages causes the issue and how do you sidestep it. And this is where IRC is really great. That's where everyone hangs out. You can often just go and just talk to somebody and say, like, hey, our packages are conflicting. What do we do about it? Very rarely are you going to end up with the case where you have to conflict and say, like, only one of the packages can be installed at a time. That's your last resort, but it's been known to happen. So, another question? Sure.
Many times instead of when I'm gonna find out a certain the backtrace instead of going to GDB and saying a breakpoint, it's myself reading in as red cosmic symbols. But since that would it just give me pointers, then is there anything that can in the runtime give me the symbol names?
Someone wrote a tool, and I forget the name of it. He kind of popped into IRC and then said, try this out, and then popped out. So I used that for a bit. But honestly, the easiest way is to just, like, kill yourself. Just crash. Just crash, and then look at this. Like, you just crash your process, and then look at the stack trace, and that works. I know that's a bizarre answer. But that works more often than not, and unless you're trying to get it through a complex path. The other thing you can do is attach with GDB, and then go and kind of have it be, like, if you're running and you hooked a function that gets called 1,000 times, and the 1,001th time it crashes, what you could do is set a breakpoint that has an if condition, and you set your breakpoint inside of your if condition. So that on that 1,001th time when you've got the crash, you can go and check the stack trace inside of GDB, or even just, like, crash in GDB, not set the breakpoint and do that. But GDB works great on the device. A little quirky in that the watchdog will sometimes, if you let it hang at the terminal too long, the watchdog will decide that Springboard has gotten itself confused and will kill it for you. So that's kind of mean. But you can either be quick or disable the watchdog. And I think that's documented on iPhone Dev Wiki somewhere, but that's another option too.
Sorry, what was I didn't hear the question.
The question was how to display symbols when we call in a spread cosmic symbols, which is a function that brings it back to the runtime.
There's one thing that I did that avoids having to crash the app, and what I did is to load all the classes that are in the runtime and their addresses, and then whenever you call that, there's like a mobile substrate tweak that takes the implementation of that function and replaces all of that addresses with method names that are found within the runtime. That's something that I can maybe share.
Yeah, the problem with that is then you get a case where someone has hooked a method, and then you think it's like SBIcon view set alpha, but it turns out it's actually J's replacement version of, or I guess set jittering was the example we used before, right? But like if he goes and says set jittering is now this new hooked version of it, then you end up with the ID changing.
I haven't had that problem because whenever there's a hooked method, what I see on the stack trace is first the call to the if it replaces the method, then yes, you're gonna get that problem. But otherwise, if it's cascading, like it's executing first the original and then
you'll get the library which will say J's dialog, and then you'll get the
original
the method name, and it'll look like SBIcon view set is jittering, but it'll for some bizarre reason come from this other library. So I guess that's a good way of doing it too. That I'm sure you could write a script and maybe you have, and if it's production ready, please share it with the community.
Sure.
Yeah.
I found that thing that was in IRC. It's called Symbolicator.
forgot about that project. I never updated it, but it's kind of what it does.
Oh, perfect. Okay, yeah. Oh, the other thing with call stack symbols is it's slow. It's really slow. You should not be calling it like in your production release to users version of your tweet. Just like you generally shouldn't be NS logging too often. Because logging is slow and it slows down the device if you do it in an interlude or something like that.
So when I actually tried some alligator, it didn't actually have any of the items.
There were a few problems with some libraries that were not loading, but definitely UI kit was great. And otherwise, that's outdated. We never updated it actually. And I have because I'm not exactly, I don't even remember what I was using there, but right now what I do is just scan the entire runtime and grab all the addresses and put them in a hash table to then look them up whenever they are.
The other fun thing about scanning the runtime is sometimes interacting with the runtime will actually cause it to have side effects. And if you're in like a stack trace and you're examining and then that triggers something else and then that crashes, like if you ask the class for a method, it'll initialize it for you. So you kind of have to be careful, like if you're in some weird path and then you accidentally initialize things.
Yeah,
So,
well, it was only like for, I needed that.
yeah, if you're doing it for
for
debugging, that's
so
great.
It worked well for what I needed.
Sure.
And it was only loaded at startup of the application, so it wouldn't really cost anything like later. And then it was everything saved on a hash table. So,
Okay, cool.
and really fast.
Anyone else? Oh, yes.
There anything like testing for tweets when you are writing them, or you're just writing stuff and then you don't like physically on your device, like testing all the functions?
Generally, I have a device for each iOS version that I support. So that means if you want to support a bunch of iOS versions, you've got a big stack of devices. Some of them half charged, some of them working, some of them, you know. But yeah, basically just you have to go through and test on the combination of devices you like. If you're doing features that are generally common to both device classes and to all the different models, you don't really have to worry about testing it on a 4S and a 4 and a 5. But if you're doing something like visual, you definitely want to test on the taller screen versus the shorter screen. And that's something you can use in the simulator. And then definitely anything visual you'll want to test on the iPad as well. Some tweaks just decide, well, I'm only supporting the iPhone or I'm only supporting the iPad. That is a really good option if you're just getting started. Or even some very, very popular tweaks decide, I'm only doing an iPhone version first, and I'm going to get that perfect, and then I'm going to do the iPad version. And that is a very good way to do it as well. Yes?
It's kind of the second part of that question is, and it's not completely related, not even be for Jay, but from the user standpoint, say you have a tweak that's buggy, that's leaking memory. Is there anything that's similar to top, where it would actually show the dialog or whatever, mode by substrate?
Yeah, so leaking memory is a little bit different than, like, top works at a process level. So you can see how much memory it's using, you can see how much CPU it's using. And that's super helpful for just, like, basic debugging. But, you know, if it's sucking up memory, you know, which tweak inside of it is using memory. And it may be like first off, you can't really tell who is allocated the memory without doing some really obtrusive tracing. And even if you do that, it might have been like the tweak has subtly changed the behavior of some part of Springboard or some part of the Messages app that causes some other part to leak memory. And it's actually really hard to debug memory issues as a user. As a developer, it's also kind of difficult, but just like learn the, I think it's, Apple's got a documentation that describes how to do memory management before before the automatic ARC stuff they added. learn that document because it's super important. Learn what copy does, learn what Alec does, and follow those rules religiously. Because they're like, if you miss a release, you leak, and even if it's a slow leak, people don't necessarily want to respring, or they don't respring, and then they end up and they're wondering, why is my phone slow? Because Springboard is just slowly leaked memory all the time. And so some people have set up, they just decided, you know what? Doesn't matter, I'm going to have my device respring every night at 12 a.m. I've heard of people doing that, and that's great, but like I prefer that they kind of like figure out which one is making it slow and just tell that developer like, hey, you've got a leak somewhere, I think. And you know, look in and find it. It's tough to find leaks and make sure and prove that you don't have any. And I certainly don't think I can say that I'm 100% sure that I don't have any. But you know, it's definitely something that if you follow the patterns, you'll get it right most of the time. And yeah, that's a tough one actually.
It's really hard. The whole concept of the extensions is they're modifying behavior of the original app. And so in essence, it's the original app that needs rendering, not the extension.
Yeah.
I ran into this horrible case recently, when I was 6 months or whatever, I mean, the last 10 years now, where there was this, people were reporting that their devices would get sluggish and that multitasking wasn't working very well. They thought maybe it was winterboard, maybe it was substrate, maybe it was this, and all these different theories. And so I was sitting around trying to figure it out, and I managed to narrow it down what happened to me. But it was really like I had to sit there and like start switching rapidly between apps, and eventually I would run out of something. And thankfully, in the message log, there was a message to the kernel saying I had run out of a particular kind of file handle, and that it was now jettisoning processes in order to get it back. And so the problem was like, what's actually causing this? So I ended up talking to Planet Me in order to figure out how I could get code loaded into the ASLR kernel so that I could kind of kernel substrate a way to figure out how many file handles had actually been allocated. And then I distributed that code throughout like winterboard and substrate and things, checking at all these various points, trying to figure out where the files are coming from. And it turns out that it wasn't even, like, as a user, you're screwed. So what would happen is you install winterboard and then you upgrade substrate. Installing winterboard was the problem, substrate wasn't itself a problem. Substrate wasn't a problem, but when you upgraded to the new version of substrate, I believe, it made something in winterboard start working correctly that previously had not. And exposed a bug, as far as I can tell, in the low-level image cache routines that Apple has for dealing with all these like moving by images. And it was brutal. Like, as a developer who's now like, I'm looking at the kernel trying to debug this like week. So, and as I said, in the end, like as a user, you sit there and you like uninstall substrate and the problem was that I didn't know if I installed substrate and the problem, and I uninstalled winterboard, the problem disappeared. I installed two together, well, it's clearly a winterboard bug, and then we tried downgrading substrate. It's like, so.
Yeah, that's. Yeah, I think I tripped over that exact same bug, and my approach was nowhere near as elaborate as Jay's was. But I mean, yeah, when weird, complex interactions happen, it's sometimes difficult, and you just have to, you know, put your hunting cap on and dig in and look. Yes.
Why are you actually not updating the activator source code on GitHub anymore? Because it has many interesting features and many developers could possibly learn from.
Yes. I think Jay kind of covered that with his sort of, he had one opinion of licensing when he started working on Cydia, and his opinion of licensing changed over the years. I had a little incident with someone where that caused me to change my opinion on licensing. So Activator is now closed source. Though if you want to take a look at it, and you have a good reason to, I would happily let you take a peek under the hood on a case-by-case basis. So, sorry, I don't have a better, freer, open answer to that, and I would Okay, if that's it.
Right, guys, we're going to end the day there. If we can give a round of applause for Jay, Ryan, and Greg. Also, just to announce that if any of you have got availed of the free ticket today, we still have the scholarship for tomorrow. If you email wwjcstaff@gmail.com, you may get a ticket for tomorrow, so send us an email. Yeah? Okay. If not, I'll see you all tomorrow. Cheers, guys.